Once you've got your document set up, you can start drawing your design. This is going to be the most basic of the chair designs. This is design number 1. So there are a number of ways that you can do this. You can use the guides and you can draw guides. And then the slightly more advanced extra challenge would be to try to use coordinates and the Pathfinder tool. So I'm going to draw design 1 in its most basic form. I know that the width and the height of my chair are 500 millilitres each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a square first of all. And I'm going to click as close as I can onto 0, 0. And I'm not going to draw the square, but I'm rather going to click once. And then what happens is it asks for dimensions. And I'm going to put in 500 by 500 and press OK. And if I zoom out slightly, you'll see that I've now got the outer bounds of my basic design 1. I can check that I've got that on the 0, 0 point. And if you use something called the transform panel, you can just double check the coordinates there. As long as you have the dot in the top left hand corner, that's the reference point, you can double check that that's on 0, 0 and that width and the height is indeed 500 millimeters. So the more advanced designers will really rely on this panel here. Perhaps slightly less advanced will rely more on guides, and I'll come to that in a moment. So because I want to create a sort of a half pipe shape, the easiest thing to do is to draw a circle that I will then cut from my square. And it's really important that I know the distance from here up to here. So here to here, I know the distance that I'd like the depth and the depth here at the top to be. So I'm going to look at my design and it says 100 millimeters. So I'm going to use the guides now, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to draw a vertical guide. Now, just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to use a selection tool and just select my square, and I'm actually going to go up to the top panel here, and I'm going to make it transparent so there's no fill colour in it. And that will just help me to be able to see the guide, the grid in the background. Then I'm going to grab the ruler on the left hand side, and without letting go, I'm going to pull the guide up to the 100 millimeter point, and I'm going to zoom out like so. I'm going to do a guide, a horizontal guide at the bottom as well. So I'm going to come down to this point here, and I know that I need to pull in a guide 100 millimeters from the bottom, and because I know that my square is on the 0, 0 point, then I know that I just need to draw a guideline on the 400 millimeters horizontal guideline. So I'm quite zoomed in. I'm just scaling back up. I'm going to grab hold of the ruler at the top. I'm going to pull it down, and then I'm going to let it go where it says 400 over here. And then if I zoom out, if I press Control 0, that will allow me to see the whole design in one go. So I've now got a square. If you press the H button on the keyboard, it gives you a little hand, which is really useful for you to move your design around. And I know that I want to have the half pipe section cut from the section within my guides. So I'm going to draw a rather large circle. So I'm going to need to zoom out a little bit more, and then I'm going to go to the ellipse tool. And because, at least I think to start off with, I would like it to be a circle, a perfect circle, I'm going to hold the Shift button whilst I draw the circle, like so. and I'm going to pull it down to start off with to the point where the guide is, and then I'm going to move it across to the other guide, like so. I'm just going to go and look at how that would then cut. See, I'm not entirely happy with at the bottom where there'd be such a sharp lip. So I think my circle needs to be larger. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to hold shift again. I'm going to pull that circle. And in fact, there's a central dot in the middle of the circle that I'm going to aim to be in line with the top right hand corner of that square. My view being that if I manage to do that, it should make for a straighter exit at the top and bottom. And so that's something I'm slightly happier with, although I do want to zoom in and look more closely, because here you can see that I'm not quite lined up with the guide. And if I click onto that, I can then move that in terms of in line with the guide. But remember, the more advanced designers will use the transform tool, and they will look at the X and Y coordinates, and they will use that to get it in the exact right place. Now we know that it needs to be 100 millimeters in from the left, so I can just overtype that to 100. However, that may well have displaced it slightly at the other end, so we just need to check that we're still happy with that. And I think we're pretty happy with that. So we're now going to use a really useful tool that helps us to cut shapes from other shapes. So if we get the window open and we use the Pathfinder tool, you'll see this will appear somewhere on your screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the circle. Then we're going to hold shift and select the square, and we're going to use one of the Pathfinder tools to cut the top shape from the bottom shape. It's called minus front, and if you click on that, what you'll see has happened is that, hey presto, we now have a really beautiful curved shape that is perfectly formed, and that was simply from cutting the circle from the square. So this is the sort of simplest chair design that I can demonstrate to you. Of course, you can mess around with the shape of that circle. You know, that probably would be a slightly uncomfortable curve. You may well need it deeper, and you can change it by drawing an ellipse rather than a circle. But for the basic purpose of the basic one design, that's how you do it. Now, in order to make it be recognised by the laser cutter, you'd need to make sure that the outlines are in basic RGB red. And if you click off that, you'll now see. And if you are struggling to see that properly, you can hide your guides. So you go to View and Hide Guide, or if you get used to the Apple or see the keyboard shortcuts, you can use those instead. And you can also view, hide guides there. So hide grid and hide guides, and then you get a much better sense of the shape that you've just designed there. So that's the basic design.